Hi, my name's Gary Taylor, and in this video I want to show you a very basic introduction to React. You can hit me up on Twitter on gpltaylor. You can also get my code off GitHub with the same address, and to shamelessly plug my website at trenchsoftware.co.uk/YouTube. Now, before we get started with showing you what React is, what I want to do is just show you a very simple HTML page that's a list of testimonials. We have got a header, we've got a menu system which allows you to click and it would filter for the particular types of testimonials that you want to look at. These are star ratings. I'm not going to win any design awards. The whole idea of this is just to show you an example. And then here we might have a list of testimonials, and you could imagine that these are an extended list that we can just keep on copying and pasting and going with so that we have our testimonials. Now, what I want to be able to do is actually split these up into components. And what I mean by that is to actually split them up into sections. So if we take this header, we could move this up to the top. And what we could do is we can actually call this header. And instead of having that initial div, what we can now do is we can actually have the header there. If I can get that sorted. So now we've got the header. We've got a menu system here. So what we might do is we might move that up, move that into its component. Call that menu. It's got a testimonial menu. So there's a testimonial menu. Let's put that in there. And then we've got each individual testimonial. So let's take this. Let's move these out to its own section here. Oops. Got fat fingers today. And let's clean this HTML up. Let's take these divs out, because with a bit of CSS we can actually make this look just as clean. So let's say that we look at the HTML and all we can see are the header, testimonial menu, and a testimonial. And of course, if we wanted to duplicate this up and show multiple testimonials, we can do that. So now we've got a clear semantical looking HTML. We know exactly what the code's doing. We know exactly what it is. Previously, we just had a load of divs and it was very difficult to work out what was actually going on. If anyone's looked at web components, one of the new standards that's coming out, you'll notice that this is very similar to web components in that I'm splitting these up into our own custom component names, and basically can get a block of HTML and actually make it function as if it's a new tag, and we can rename these. Now, of course, we don't want to be showing the same testimonial 3 times. What we want to be doing is be able to pass in some parameters. And we can do that by passing in some values. So let's actually call that testimonial name. We can take that and then we can use that as a variable within our existing HTML. So now wherever we've got this bracket or a mustache, we can actually take this variable and use it in this place. So now all we need to be able to do is, instead of it being hard-coded here, we can actually take this and move this down to the bottom and pass them in as properties or props. So in this scenario, we're going to load this testimonial block and we're going to pass in our variable. and that's going to go in that place, and we're going to pass in another variable, and that's going to go in there. And now we can reuse this so that we can pass in multiple testimonials reusing this exact same template component, and actually pass in some props which will then go in. So we can see now that we've got the testimonials with all the data in there. Now, if you're following along at home, don't be surprised. None of this would obviously work within standard HTML. We need to be able to do something a little bit more with this in order to get this to work. One of the things we can do is, instead of these being HTML, we can actually just use this as pure JavaScript. So we can take this section and we can convert it to a JavaScript function. So what I've done is wrapping it up in a script. I've created a const called testimonial, and I'm going to return this HTML template which we saw, and I also need to pass in the parameters. So I need a couple of parameters, which is the testimonial name and the testimonial to display. It's going to take them parameters and put them in. So now when we run this testimonial, it's going to run this function, passing in these parameters to the function and simply returning back the HTML with the divs with the data in them. So the props then will be displayed. So now we're going to get 3 testimonials in a row, all using the same HTML block. So let's see if we can do the same with the testimonials menu. So we take the testimonials menu content, let's make a const which is testimonials menu. Just use the arrow function with an automatic return. In fact, I don't need that return there, but it doesn't matter. I'm only showing you an example. Obviously, we don't need testimonial menu because that is now this section, this variable. So I'm just going to change this back to a div. And now where we've got the testimonials menu, we can actually display this menu. So that's as simple as it is to actually convert a static HTML page and start templating it out so that it's using React components instead of it just being so static. You can start to think about how you can use this now as data. We can see that we've actually got a couple of sections here. And we can start to think about, well, how can I actually pass this in as data? Because we might have loads of different testimonials. We want to go off to an API, make a call, and maybe produce this list from the data that we get back from the API. Well, with this just being JavaScript, we can actually then just pass these in as data. And what I mean by that is that we can have the existing testimonials menu, but what we'll do is we'll actually pass in an array, which I've called ranking in this scenario, but that prop can be called whatever you like. And what we're going to do is, whilst we're in the middle of our HTML, we can dive out to JavaScript code and we can loop through each of the rankings in the array, get the ratings and get how many hits it's got. So this now allows us to just be able to pass in some data. So in this scenario, what we could do is we could actually pass in rankings equals an array, and this is then going to be an array of objects, which is going to have a rate, which is going to say 5 stars, and then hits, and we could say that we had 235 hits for 5-star rankings. So if we go through, you could do 4, 3, 1, and we had 2 1-stars. We should be doing better with this site. We had 5 4s, 600 5 3s, 600 4-stars, and 235 5-star ratings. This data forms the array that will go into that variable there, loop through and produce the list. So now we can do this. Now if you imagine we've got the testimonials, we could do exactly the same with testimonials. We can produce an array of testimonials, loop through them, Every time we loop through, we can actually use the testimonials block. So what we're really doing is we have the ability to turn standard HTML and JavaScript, standard HTML and CSS and design work into JavaScript. We can now start truly coding the UI. For me as a developer and as a coder, I love this idea because it means that we can keep on reusing what we know. We use JavaScript everywhere. I'm not having to learn some other extension. I'm not having to learn some other language to actually get the UI to work. I don't need to learn like knockout or mustache tasks or all the loops. If I want to do a loop, it's just a JavaScript loop. If I want to display some HTML, it's just HTML. And then when I want to display it, I can actually use HTML. One of the things that I try and do is I try and think of it as that's the name of the method, and them are the arguments that are being passed into that method, and the return data is going to be the HTML that I then display on the screen. That's a really good way of looking at it. Now, this has been a really short introduction to React. What I want to do in the next tutorial is show you how you can move data in and how you can actually use React components to store their own data. I also want to tell you a little bit about how you can actually truly get React up and running and how you can get your first project. So that tutorial will be coming soon. As always, guys, if you love this, then please hit that subscribe button and don't forget to click that like. It's equally as important. Cheers, guys.